I found my daughter Sarah collapsed on her bathroom floor at 3 a.m, her lips turning blue and foam at the corners of her mouth. The ambulance was still 10 minutes away when she grabbed my hand with what little strength she had left and whispered, "Mom!" It was Victoria. She put something in my tea. She said our blood doesn't belong in her family. Let me take you back to where this nightmare began, because I need you to understand how a woman like me, a retired schoolteacher from a working-class neighborhood in Cleveland, ended up going to war with one of the wealthiest families in Ohio. My daughter Sarah was 28 when she met Daniel Blackwood at a charity fundraiser where she volunteered. She was a pediatric nurse at Cleveland Clinic, the kind of girl who'd give you the coat off her back in winter. Daniel was different from the boys she'd grown up with in our neighborhood. He was polished, educated, came from money, but he seemed genuinely kind. And when he looked at Sarah, I saw real love in his eyes. They dated for 2 years before he proposed. I should have seen the red flags during that engagement dinner when his mother, Victoria Blackwood, barely touched Sarah's hand during the greeting. The woman looked at my daughter like she was examining a stain on expensive silk. Victoria owned Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, a company worth hundreds of millions. Her husband had been old Cleveland money, dead now for 5 years, leaving her in control of everything. "Sarah seems nice," Victoria had said that night, her voice dripping with the kind of contempt that comes wrapped in politeness. "Though I must admit, Daniel, I always imagined you'd choose someone from your own circle. Someone who understands our world." My daughter had smiled through it, squeezed Daniel's hand under the table. "I'm a fast learner, Mrs. Blackwood." But Victoria wasn't interested in Sarah learning. She was interested in Sarah leaving. The wedding happened despite Victoria's obvious disapproval. It was a small ceremony, Sarah insisted, knowing that Victoria would turn anything bigger into a battlefield. For the first year, things seemed manageable. Daniel and Sarah had their own place in Cleveland Heights, far enough from Victoria's mansion in Gates Mills that they could build their own life. My daughter was happy. She'd light up when she talked about Daniel, about the little routines they'd built together, the plans they had. Then Sarah got pregnant. That's when everything changed. That's when Victoria's coldness turned to something far more dangerous. "She keeps showing up at our house," Sarah told me one afternoon, 6 months into her pregnancy. We were sitting in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd raised her after her father died when she was 12. Yesterday she brought over a care package, prenatal vitamins, special teas, supplements. She said the ones I was taking weren't good enough, that the Blackwood heir deserved the best. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Did you take any of it?" "No." It felt wrong, the way she insisted, practically forcing them into my hands. "Mom, I know this sounds paranoid, but I don't trust her." "Then don't take them," I said firmly. "Trust your gut, baby girl. It's kept you safe this long." But Victoria was persistent. She'd show up with homemade soups, special health drinks, always with that same insistence that Sarah consume them immediately. "For the baby," she'd say, her smile never reaching her eyes. 3 weeks before Sarah's due date, I got the call. The hospital. Emergency. Potential miscarriage. I broke every speed limit getting there. Found Daniel in the waiting room, his face white as paper. "They don't know what caused it," he said, his voice shaking. "She just started bleeding. They're trying to save the baby." They did save the baby, my grandson, James. But it was close. Too close. And Sarah never fully recovered from those complications. The doctors couldn't explain it. Her blood work showed elevated levels of certain compounds, things that shouldn't have been there. "It's like she was exposed to something," one doctor told me quietly. "But we can't identify what." I started paying attention after that. Started noticing patterns. Every time Victoria visited, Sarah would feel sick afterward. Headaches, nausea, fatigue, always with a reasonable explanation: stress from new motherhood, sleep deprivation, hormonal changes. But I'd raised 3 children. I knew what normal postpartum looked like, and this wasn't it. Then came the tea incident. I'd stopped by Sarah's house unannounced one afternoon, found Victoria in the kitchen, alone, stirring something into a cup. She jumped when she saw me, actually physically startled, her hand going to her chest. "Margaret," she said, my name sounding like an accusation. "I didn't hear you come in." "Sarah gave me a key," I said, watching her. "What are you making?" "Just some herbal tea. For Sarah's energy levels. She's been so tired lately." Victoria's smile was practiced, perfect. I had it specially blended by a herbalist in New York. Very expensive, very effective. I'm sure, I said. Sarah's resting upstairs with the baby. I'll make sure she gets it. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Just slightly. Actually, it's best consumed immediately while hot. The herbs lose their potency otherwise. I'll just take it up to her. That's okay, I said, taking the cup from her hands. I'm heading up anyway. The look Victoria gave me in that moment, I'll never forget it. Pure hatred, barely concealed beneath that polished exterior. She left shortly after, claiming she had an appointment. I didn't give that tea to Sarah. Instead, I did something that might sound crazy, but my mama used to tell me, "Trust your gut, Margaret. When something feels wrong, it usually is." I took that tea to my son-in-law's younger brother, Andrew, who worked as a lab technician at Case Western. "Can you test this?" I asked him. "Don't tell Daniel. Don't tell anyone. I just need to know what's in it." 3 days later, Andrew called me. His voice was shaking. "Margaret, where did you get this? There are trace amounts of compounds in here that they shouldn't be in any herbal tea. One is used in blood thinners, but at levels that could cause internal bleeding. Another is, Jesus, Margaret, it's similar to compounds used in certain experimental drugs. In these combinations, over time, it could cause organ damage. Whoever made this knows exactly what they're doing. This is deliberate." I felt my blood turn to ice. "Can you prove it? Officially? Not without more samples. And Margaret, if this is what I think it is, we're talking about attempted murder. We need to go to the police." "Not yet," I said, my mind racing. "If we go to the police now, Victoria has the money and lawyers to bury this. We need more evidence. And Andrew? Sarah can never drink anything Victoria gives her again, ever." I explained everything to Sarah that night. Watched her face go pale, her hands trembling as she held baby James. "I can't believe. She's Daniel's mother. Why would she want to hurt me?" "Because you're not one of them," I said bitterly. "Because your blood isn't blue enough for her precious family line." Daniel was harder to convince. He wanted to believe his mother was incapable of such things. But Sarah was his wife, and the evidence, though circumstantial, was damning enough that he agreed to be cautious. That's when Victoria escalated. It started with the custody threats. Victoria hired lawyers, started building a case that Sarah was an unfit mother. Depression, instability, inability to care for the child properly. All lies, but lies told by a woman with unlimited resources and connections throughout Ohio's legal system. "She's going to try to take James," Sarah said one night, tears streaming down her face. "Daniel's trying to fight her, but she's his mother, and she has so much power, Mom. How do we fight that?" I thought about my own mother then. My mama had grown up poor in Appalachia, married my father who worked in the steel mills. She didn't have money or education, but she had something Victoria Blackwood would never understand. She had survival instincts sharpened by a lifetime of being underestimated by people who thought money made them better. "Sarah," I said, "do you remember what your grandmother used to tell me? About dealing with people who think they're untouchable?" Sarah wiped her eyes. "Document everything. Build your case in silence. Strike when they least expect it." "Exactly." I took her hand. "Victoria thinks we're beneath her. She thinks we'll just roll over because she has money and power. But baby girl, your grandmother taught me how to fight dirty when necessary, and it's time we put those lessons into practice." That's when the real work began. I started documenting everything. Every visit from Victoria, every gift of food or drink, every threat disguised as concern. I bought a small camera, installed it discreetly in Sarah's kitchen. Andrew collected samples of everything Victoria brought over, built a chemical profile that showed a pattern of poisoning over months. But we needed more. We needed proof of intent, of malice. We needed Victoria to incriminate herself. Daniel, to his credit, once he fully understood what his mother was doing, became our inside man. It nearly destroyed him choosing between his wife and mother, but he chose right. He started recording conversations with Victoria, wearing a wire when she'd make her veiled threats. "That baby deserves better than a mother from nowhere," Victoria said in one recording, her voice cold. "Sometimes nature has to be helped along, for the good of the family." It was enough. Almost. The night I found Sarah on her bathroom floor was the night Victoria made her final, fatal mistake. She'd convinced Daniel to go on a business trip, leaving Sarah alone with the baby. Then she'd shown up with her special tea, insisting Sarah drink it while she held James. But Sarah had texted me the moment Victoria arrived. I'd come over with my own plan. While the ambulance rushed Sarah to the hospital, I called Andrew and our family lawyer, a scrappy woman named Rita Chen, who specialized in going after the powerful. I also called a journalist friend who'd been investigating pharmaceutical companies for years. I have a story for you, I told him from the hospital, about how Victoria Blackwood, owner of Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, has been systematically poisoning her daughter-in-law to try to kill her and take custody of her grandson. And I have evidence. Victoria's mistake was underestimating us. She thought we'd be too scared, too overwhelmed by her wealth and power to fight back. She didn't count on a working-class mother who'd spent her whole life being underestimated, who'd learned from her own mother that the people on top often forget that the people on the bottom have been learning their weaknesses all along. The story broke 3 days after Sarah was admitted to the ICU. Front page of the Cleveland Plain Dealer, pharmaceutical heiress accused of attempted murder. Andrew's lab analysis, the recordings, the medical records showing Sarah's mysterious illnesses that coincided with Victoria's visits, the security footage from Sarah's kitchen showing Victoria tampering with food and drinks. Victoria's high-powered lawyers tried to spin it, but there were too many pieces, too much evidence, and the pharmaceutical angle made it juicy enough that national media picked it up. Turns out Victoria had done this before there were whispers about Daniel's father's death, about a business partner who'd gotten mysteriously ill before selling his shares to Victoria for pennies. The police arrested Victoria Blackwood 6 days after she tried to kill my daughter, charged with attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Her lawyers are still fighting, of course, but the evidence is overwhelming. Sarah survived. She's still recovering, but the doctors say she'll make a full recovery now that the poisoning has stopped. Daniel stood by her through everything, cut his mother off completely. It cost him his inheritance, his place in the Blackwood family empire, but he says he doesn't care. I'd rather have integrity than wealth, he told me. Little James is 18 months old now, happy, healthy, growing like a weed. He'll never know his grandmother Victoria, and that's just fine with me. People ask me sometimes how I knew, how I figured it out. The truth is, I didn't at first. But my mama taught me to pay attention when something feels wrong, to trust that instinct that comes from years of watching how people with power abuse it. She taught me that money and status don't make you better, they just give you more weapons. And she taught me that sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can be is underestimated. Victoria Blackwood thought she could eliminate my daughter because Sarah wasn't good enough for her precious family name. She thought that money and connections would protect her from consequences. She forgot that mothers like me, we're dangerous when you threaten our children. We're survivors. We know how to be patient, how to gather evidence, how to strike when the moment is right. The trial is set to begin in 3 months. Rita says we have a solid case, that Victoria will likely spend the rest of her life in prison. The pharmaceutical company is facing separate investigations now, lawsuits from families of other people who mysteriously got sick. Daniel sold his shares in Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, gave most of the money to the victims' families. He and Sarah are rebuilding their life, this time on their own terms, without the weight of that poisonous legacy. Last week, Sarah and I were sitting on her porch, watching James toddle around the backyard. The evening light was golden, and for the first time in months, my daughter looked peaceful. "Mom," she said quietly, "Grandma would be proud of you." I thought about my mama then, about all the lessons she'd taught me growing up poor in a world that valued money over character, about how she'd survived by being smart, by documenting everything, by knowing that the powerful get sloppy because they never expect the powerless to fight back. "She'd be proud of you too," I said to Sarah. "You survived. You protected your baby. You were brave enough to believe me when everyone else would have called you paranoid." Sarah leaned her head on my shoulder. "What did Grandma used to say?" "About people like Victoria." I smiled, remembering. She said, "Baby girl, the difference between the strong and the weak isn't in how much money you have or how many people bow to you. It's in how much you're willing to fight for what's right, and how much you're willing to sacrifice to protect the people you love. From the backyard, James squealed with laughter, chasing after a butterfly. My grandson, safe and loved, growing up in a world where his mother is alive because we refused to be victims. Because we fought back. Victoria Blackwood sits in a jail cell now, awaiting trial. Her empire is crumbling. Her name is mud, and all her money couldn't buy her way out of the consequences of trying to murder an innocent woman just because that woman wasn't born with the right last name. Sometimes people ask me if I feel sorry for her. They say she's an old woman, that prison will probably kill her. I don't feel sorry for her, not even a little bit, because every time I think about forgiving her, I remember my daughter's blue lips, her desperate whisper, the way she fought to stay alive long enough to tell me who'd poisoned her. I remember my grandson, who almost lost his mother before he even knew her. No, I don't feel sorry for Victoria Blackwood. I feel proud. Proud that we survived her. Proud that we fought back and won. Proud that we proved that money and power don't always win in the end. Sometimes, justice does. The truth is, this story isn't just about one evil woman and one attempted murder. It's about class, about the way wealthy people think they can do whatever they want to those they consider beneath them. It's about how money can corrupt, how power can poison not just bodies, but souls. But it's also about something else. It's about the strength that comes from being underestimated, the power that comes from solidarity, from family, from refusing to give up even when the odds seem impossible. My mama taught me that. She taught me that the people on top might have money and lawyers and connections, but the people on the bottom have something even more powerful. We have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Victoria Blackwood learned that lesson the hard way, and I hope every other wealthy, powerful person who thinks they can hurt people without consequences is paying attention. Because we're not as powerless as you think we are. We're not as weak as you assume. We're survivors. We're fighters. We're mothers and daughters and sisters who refuse to let our children be sacrificed on the altar of your precious family legacy. You can have your money. You can have your power. You can have your big houses and fancy lawyers. But you can't have our lives. Not without a fight. And trust me, when you're fighting someone who has nothing left to lose, someone who's protecting their child, someone who's learned to be patient and methodical and ruthless, when necessary you're going to lose. Victoria Blackwood lost. And my daughter lived. That's all that matters in the end.